Hello, Super Jardineros and everyone else who is watching this video on propagation of plants by seed. I am Ana Regalado with Verde, and today we're going to continue session 5. This is the second video in session 5, and we're going to discuss the environmental factors that affect seed germination. So in the previous video for session 5, we talked all about what seed germination is. We talked about, the steps to seed germination, and now we're going to talk about what we mentioned in that video, the environmental factors. So to do that, we're going to try to answer two questions. We're going to try to answer the question of what is an environmental factor? How do we define that? And what are the things that make up an environmental factor? And we're going to try to answer, how does the environment affect seed germination? And this isn't the environment, in total overall, thinking about climate and other things like that. This is just the environment that the seed is in, right? Its surrounding environment. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and define what an environmental factor is. So environmental factors, simply put, are the external conditions that can influence the germination of seeds and the growth and development of our seedlings and plants. So it's basically all of the external factors, everything outside of the seed that can affect its germination. In the previous video, we talked about all the things that were inside of a seed that can affect germination, and now we're going to talk about everything that is exterior to the seed. And this is important because when we think of seed germination, you think of, okay, a seed needs three things. It needs light, warmth, and water. And that is very true. But as a greenhouse manager, there are other environmental factors that we can think about and need to consider. So we're going to go ahead and take those three a step further. So thinking about those three, how does the environment in which a seed is in affect its germination? So there are many environmental factors that can affect seed germination, right? Not just those, not just light, water, and temperature. We're going to talk about what are some examples of environmental factors, and we're also going to talk about, can we control environmental factors in the greenhouse? So to start, examples of environmental factors can include light intensity and color. So this is how strong light is. If it's in direct light, it might not be as strong as seed that is directly under the beaming sun. And the color of light. So without getting too technical, there are certain rays of light that plants use better to photosynthesize, right? And as a seed, you don't need a very specific amount or type of light, but what you do need is close proximity to the soil surface, or the correct, proximity to the surface in order to reach the light, right? And this has a lot to do with planting depth for seeds. Temperature, right? Seeds like to be germinated in warm environments. And temperature is something that is exterior to the seed. Day and night length. A seed that you would sprout in the summer or in the spring when there are longer days have different day and night length requirements than a seed that you might sprout in the fall, right? So that's something to think about too that could affect seed germination. Surrounding conditions, right? How crowded is the seed? Are there a lot of seeds nearby? Are there other nearby plants where you're planting the seed? That is an environmental factor to think about because it can lead to over competition for resources, right? For water, for space, for air, for root growth. Another thing that you can think about is water, right? Not just how much you water it, but also the kind of water you use. If you're using, water on a daily basis versus if you're watering with less frequency, that's an environmental factor that could affect germination because seeds like to be consistently moist but not waterlogged. Seed quality is another very important environmental factor, and this is in terms of how the way we treat our seeds can affect seed quality, right? So thinking about seed storage, I'm going to talk about a little bit about that in the future, in the next slide. Sorry, not the future. And oxygen, right? If, like I mentioned before, seeds like to be consistently moist, but not waterlogged. So they still want access to moisture. They don't want to be, completely always in water. That could cause them to rot or to, it can negatively impact germination. So now that we've talked about the different types of environmental factors that could affect seed germination, let's talk about how we, as someone that is running a greenhouse, as a greenhouse manager, can control environmental factors in a greenhouse setting. So one of the ways that we as greenhouse managers can control light intensity and color, and also day and night length, is with artificial lighting, right? So if you'll notice, in some larger greenhouses, they might have grow lights, and these grow lights might serve separate purposes, right? These grow lights might have a certain brightness or a certain color. There are grow lights that shine blue, there are grow lights that shine red, and there are some grow lights that shine pink or purple. And those light colors and light rays have a certain impact and reason for which they are used. And that is a way, certain light can help speed the growth or improve the growth of seedlings. And that's something that's one way that greenhouses use artificial lights to manage and control light intensity and color. Another way they use artificial light is to manage and control day and night length, right? If you have a seed that needs 8 hours of light to germinate, or if you have a plant that needs 10 hours of light to germinate, and you're trying to germinate it or grow it, in a condition with 4 or 6 hours of light, you might want to put in grow lights so that, you can mimic a longer day length, right? Or a shorter night length. Another way that you can control day and night length is by creating a longer night length by maybe covering up your seedlings with a box, right? Some plants really need that dark period. Some seeds need that dark period to germinate, and some plants need it to grow. For example, poinsettias, if you've ever, the red Christmas flowers, those poinsettias only bloom red or have those red leafed bracts when they're exposed to a certain number of darkness hours and a certain number of light hours. And that's an important way that, if you're a greenhouse manager that's growing poinsettias, it's important for you to be able to control that day and night length. One of the ways that we as greenhouse managers can control temperature is we can increase temperature with heating mats, right? A lot of seeds like to germinate in warm conditions. So we can mimic that in very late winter, early in the year, January, February, when we're trying to get a jump on our spring and summer seedlings with seed mats, right? We can bring up the temperature in that cold outdoor greenhouse. In the heat of summer, when we're trying to germinate seedlings for fall and winter, we can cool temperatures, right? We can do that by misting the surrounding area and increasing, increasing ventilation. We can do that by putting fans on, which increases ventilation and cools things down. There are different things that we can do to sort of try and control the temperature in our greenhouses. And there are some very low-tech solutions and some very high-tech solutions that you can use. Another way that we can control environmental factors for seeds is surrounding conditions, right? We as greenhouse managers get to choose how many seeds we plant in a certain area, right? Is it going to be 1 seed per soil plug? Is it going to be 3? Is it going to be 5? And we get to control what plants are nearby, if they're shading the area or if they're not. And that's a really important thing to think about too. We control water quantity and quality by, deciding what water we use to water and how often we water and with what amount of water we use, right? We can use water trays and water from the bottom to prevent plant or seedling from drying out. We can have irrigation systems that water. It's something that we can control. It's completely within our hands to control that, especially in such an enclosed environment, right? It's not something where we're dependent on the rain for water or we're dependent on something else. It's completely in our control. Seed quality, again, back on this topic. One way that we as greenhouse managers can control seed quality is by controlling how we store our seeds, right? If we store our seeds in a dry, cool space, away from light, away from heat, away from excess moisture, those seeds are most likely going to have a higher seed quality and germinate better simply because we've stored them in good conditions, as opposed to storing them, outside where they're exposed to lots of moisture, lots of heat, lots of wind, different aspects and factors like that, which could lead to poor germination later on. One of the things that's a little harder to control in a greenhouse is oxygen, right? We can't create more oxygen in a greenhouse. We can't, pump in a bunch of oxygen. But what we can do is we can increase airflow, which, some air might bringing air from the outside might have more oxygen coming in, and we can control our soil mixes. And our soil mixes allow oxygen to get down into the roots if they're well draining. So that's something that we can control slightly, but not completely. So now that we've talked about environmental factors and how they affect germination, we've answered what an environmental factor is, right? It's simply the external conditions that impact the germination, growth, or development of a seed or seedling, right? It's just everything going on outside of it. And how does the environment affect seed germination, right? Thinking about how light affects it and water affects it. And then on the flip side, thinking about how we can impact those environmental factors, right? How can we change the light? How can we change the water? How can we change the temperature? How can we control those factors to improve seed germination or seedling growth? And, I encourage you, Super Jardineros, to go and take a look in your greenhouse and really think about what are the ways in which I can control the environmental factors. What environmental factors are at play here out of the ones that we listed, here? And how can I impact those? How can I control those? What say do I have in those? It's really good to start thinking about those processes now as opposed to later on. So, be sure to watch the next video to learn more about seed dormancy, right? And how we can help break that, and to learn how to set up your seed germination activity. And that's the activity that you're going to do with the materials that we handed out in the previous weeks. And if you have any questions surrounding environmental factors, if something was confusing, if you're unsure about something, please let I or Claudia know, and we'll help, resolve that for you. And if you're just a viewer that's watching this video for fun, go ahead and comment down below, and we'll see if we can help you out with an answer. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed, and take care. Bye. See you in the next video.